morning. How are you today? So today I wanted to talk to you about applying your foundation in the best way possible. And there are not ticks, we're not in deer season. There are tips and tricks that professionals use, and so it doesn't matter what foundation you use. If you use these tips, it'll make it go on better. Tip number 1 is make sure that you are washing your face every single night. Washing your face at night means you're removing the oil, the dirt, your old makeup. You're also exfoliating your skin a little bit. Sometimes you need to still do it more, but just the washing itself gives your face something clean to go onto in the morning when you're doing your makeup. And it's going to make you break out less. It's going to make you have smoother skin. Your skin's going to look less dry because you're exfoliating all that dead stuff. So in the long run, washing your face is one of the best things you can do to make your foundation go on better in the morning. Tip number 2, when I get out of the shower, the first thing I do is I put on my moisturizer on my face. And this is because your moisturizer needs to absorb into your skin before you put on the next thing. Think of it this way: if you have ever painted anything in your life, whether you've painted a wall or a craft item or you paint on canvas, the rule is you do thin coat, let it dry. Thin coat, let it dry. Because if you do thick coats of everything, it just all becomes mottled together and your end result is no bueno. So put your moisturizer on, and again, I use Younique's Divine, and it works for me. I love it. If you'd like more information on this, comment below. But let it absorb into your skin. Depending on how dry your skin is, it can take anywhere from 1 to 5 minutes. So you got to know your skin. Once that's dry, the next step is primer. Now, primer, I want you to think of in terms of if you've ever watched anyone make a cake. Now, when they frost it, they do what's called a crumb coat. They put this thin coat on top of the cake, and that makes sure that none of the crumbs are going to get into the nice, fluffy, frosty, pretty layer, okay? So, the crumb coat makes the pretty frosting go on nice and pretty. Another way to look at it is if you paint the wall and you have plastered the wall, you want it to have a nice smooth surface, because if you've textured the wall or you haven't sanded down your plaster, you're not going to have a smooth surface for that paint to go on. And in order for the paint to look at its optimal best, the way it was designed to look, and for the way the frosting to look the prettiest, you've got to do that thin crumb coat or that smooth the plaster out. So if you do that with your primer and you're not rubbing it in, you're just putting it on right on top, you're letting it float on top, what it does is it minimizes the appearance of pores and fine lines. So then the next step is going to be you're finally at your foundation. And again, primer needs to dry, and it usually takes me about 1 minute to 2 minutes for it to dry. And so while it's drying, I do something else. I don't just stand there waiting for stuff to dry. So then the next step is to use your foundation. And I use the Liquid Touch with Younique, which it dries to a powder finish. Now here's the important part. Whether you use your fingers or you're using a beauty blender, you're not pushing it into the skin. It's a really gentle movement. Again, like with your paint, when you're doing a nice coat or you're doing frosting on a cake, it's just a nice gentle movement. You're spreading it around. And if you do it right and you do thin layers, it's not going to look all mottled. It's not going to look cakey, and it goes on beautifully. Okay? So thin layers, just make sure it's all spread around. If you do not get the coverage that you want in your first layer of foundation, that's okay, because Younique's foundation is what we call buildable, meaning you can do small layers one on top of the other and it all just blends in with each other. However, just like when you do multiple coats of paint on your wall, you let the first one dry, then you do the second coat. So what I do is, while the first one's drying, if I want to do multiple coats on a given day, because some days I have very red cheeks, other days not so much. Some days I care more if my red cheeks show, other days not so much. So while that foundation is drying, you could do something like put on your mascara, you could brush your teeth, or what I'm doing, I am putting a primer on my eyes. So don't just stand there wasting time. You only have so much time to get ready in the morning. Do the next step of your beauty routine. Okay, so that's long enough for it to dry. And I shook the foundation up the first time. I don't have to shake it up the second time that I applied. It's already nice and blended. Okay, so I don't have to do my forehead so much the second time around because it's really the cheek area. Now you can use your finger if you like. The first time I showed you using the brush, but you can certainly use your finger. And the key, you don't want thick spots. You think thick spots will cover it better, but you don't. You want thin layers, and if you need to touch up a specific, just a small spot later, you can. Okay, so when you're doing a beauty blender, don't pound on it hard. You're tap, tap, tapping. If you're using the brush, gentle strokes. Just make sure it's all blended in. I do like to use a brush to blend in so it comes down the neck. Okay. And then before you apply your brush, again, you let your foundation dry. And if you want to use a powder to set it, you're more than welcome to do that. You can do it with any foundation. And what you do is you do let it dry for a few seconds, 30 to 60 seconds is the best. Kind of let it start to dry, then put on your powder finish. Otherwise, what happens is if it's totally wet when you're trying to apply your powder, you're removing that foundation. The powder isn't to make it dry, the powder is to make it set. So you want the foundation to dry before you put your powder on. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, please comment down below. Let me know and I will try to answer them. All right, my beauties, you have a great Sunday afternoon. Bye.